My name is Graesser. I'm from University of Memphis, and I'm happy to be here. And I can say, I know that Alabama is a dirty word, and I promise not to use that word during the next hour, Alabama. Okay, so what I'm going to be talking about is intelligent conversational agents. These are agents that help people learn by holding a conversation in natural language. So just like I can talk to you face to face, and I get to see your face, and we talk in language, we have gestures. What we try to do is put that on a computer. So imagine people throughout the world, ideally millions of people simultaneously learning by getting on the internet and holding conversations with these agents. And that's the idea. And we've been doing this for about 15 years. So this is just a few of the conversational agents that we've worked on, or some of my colleagues, but some of my collaborators have worked on. Some of them are very cartoonish, some of them are male, some of them are female, some of them are three-dimensional, like the PK Dick android. This simulated a science fiction writer, Philip K. Dick. He's the one who wrote Total Recall and a few other science fiction. And this was a fully embodied agent, fully embodied, three-dimensional, could turn to you. Very creepy. And it was all in natural language. And so these are the sort of systems I'm going to talk about. Let me talk about two of my favorite systems with agents that I wasn't involved in, but some of my colleagues were, and they've gotten some limelight. One is the Tactical Language and Culture Training System. This is where you train people how to speak another language. In this case, it was Tactical Iraqi, namely the language in Iraq. Lewis Johnson built this system for some of the soldiers that are over there to learn the language over there, but also the culture. There are cultural norms. And they had it in a virtual reality system, and it had would converse in natural language. You could speak in it with speech recognition, and it was very interactive. And they had about 30 scenarios in it, meeting people on the sidewalk, trying to purchase something at some sort of merchant, many different scenarios. And it was a game environment that would score points on how well you interacted with them in this contextualized, situated scenario. And this won the 2005 award with DARPA. This is a defense organization, the one that created the internet. And it helped many hundreds and thousands of soldiers learn the languages in Iraq. Here's another one, Betty's Brain. This is a system that helps Betty, the little agent on the bottom there, how to learn about, in this case, about, let me see, this one was skin and muscle. This was biological. And the way it helped Betty learn is to create a concept map. This is one of these structures, this diagram on events and what events cause other events, like cold detection, and another one is skin muscle contraction. All of these are events, and there's a causal system. And so what the human does is create this structure. That's Betty's brain. And Betty's brain, it grows with this structure. And then Betty takes a test. And the test follows the constraints of Betty's brain in this structure. So the idea that the human teaches Betty through this concept map, and then Betty takes a test, and will miss some items if the structure is not right. So this is an amazing system because it's accountable. It's not just a cognitive structure or a concept map that's arbitrary. It has to be accurate so Betty can pass the test. This is the teachable agents sort of mission of Dan Schwartz and Dalton Biswas, and a very impressive system, and it helps students learn science. And note that you have Betty as an agent, and there's also a coach agent. This coach, David, will help the student when they get into trouble and kind of guide things along. And the idea of having these agents that have these different roles, we think, is a revolutionary impact on education. So, oh, by the way, students also learn by reading. The human can read things in order to build a concept map in order to help Betty pass the test. So reading is part of the process. So here's the challenge. How do we design dialogues with an agent? Trialogs, two agents with a human? Quadralogs, quintalogs, ensembles of agents to interact with the human to help them learn. That's the concept. And you want the agents to be sensitive to not only their cognitive states, but their social states, their emotional or affective states, their motivation and emotion. How can you get them to be sensitive to what I call the SCAM mechanisms? Social, cognitive, affective, and motivational mechanisms. That's the goal. So here's an overview of what I want to talk about. I want to talk a little bit about AutoTutor and other agents that we developed in Memphis during the last 16 years. The impact on learning, emotions in learning. We know we live in a world where you have to tightly couple emotions and learning in order to build successful systems of today. Because otherwise the learners will get bored and then nothing gets learned. And then I want to talk about Operation Aries, a serious game we're commercializing with Pearson Education. And then finally some recent projects. I'm only going to talk a little bit about a lot instead of a lot about a little. So let me warn you. So AutoTutor, this once again got started about 16 years ago where we tried to build an agent to help students learn about computer literacy. We didn't have enough teachers then to teach computer literacy, and so we thought maybe having an agent on a computer will allow them to learn and hopefully learn even better. So we have the main question, in this case, how does the operating system interact with the word processing program when you create a document? Now notice, this is a deep reasoning question. This is not a simple yes-no question or fill in the blanks question. This requires about 10 sentences of information in the reasoning. And what you want is the student to answer that question. Now, we know if you ask a question like that, they typically only give you 2 or 3 sentences of answers at most. Not a single student out of many thousands have ever given a well-articulated, complete answer to that question, ever. And it will probably never happen. So what you need is the agent to hold a conversation to flesh out that, to get more out of them than they know, that you think they know from just off the top of the head answering it the first turn. And so that's what we do. We hold these conversations to reason, to get a more complete answer to that, and hopefully they'll eventually answer it. The agent will fill in what's missing. The agent will summarize. The agent might get the students to summarize, and that's how we think people will learn at a deeper level. So what does AutoTutor do? Well, it asks questions and presents problems. It evaluates the meaning of the learner's answers. We have these semantic conceptual analyzers on the computer to follow, and they don't have to answer it perfectly, just approximately the meaning through advances in computational linguistics. It gives feedbacks on their answers. It displays facial expressions with emotions. It nods and gestures. It hints how to get a good hint to try to get the student on the right track is hard. I can't say we've got it perfect, but we try. It prompts for specific information. Sometimes it's hard to get a student to say like one word. And in fact, about 40% of the students, if you can get a word out of them, that is a major accomplishment. And so if you have prompts to try to finesse getting a single word out of their mouth. It adds information that is missed. It corrects bugs and misconceptions. It answers some questions that students may ask, not all of them. That's a hard thing. We are not at the point in history, not even with Siri, where it can answer any question a person might ask. But it can answer some of them, and for the ones that can't answer, it can say things like, you know, that's a good question. I wish I had an answer. How would you answer it? But you can do little tricks like that. It guides a learner in interactive 3D simulations. So here's one in physics. Once again, we had to do this in physics because we couldn't get enough physics teachers. And in fact, in the school systems in Memphis, K-12, there are 3,700 teachers. How many of them do you think have a college degree, a baccalaureate degree in physics? How many? 0. So a tutor may be better than 0, you know, in terms of domain knowledge. So you have, here is the question. Deep reasoning again. This is about the sun and the earth sort of thing, and gravity. You have the head, the talking head that gestures. You have student input, either typing or speech, either one. By the way, who do you think, how many think that typing helps people learn more than speaking? How many vote typing? How many vote speaking? Okay, you're all old enough to vote. Yeah. Well, the answer, it's a tie. And there are certain advantages of speaking and certain advantages of typing, and you can think of them. I mean, it helps people write, isn't that good? But speaking, you get more off the mind. So it's about a wash. And so this is kind of the nature of the dialogue in physics. Now, if you have a question like this, that's deep reasoning, typically human tutors do something very similar to the AutoTutor. And what is that? They have in their mind a set of expectations they expect them to articulate. These are the expected good answers. So, and humans do this too. They have a problem, and they're kind of expecting something out of the student. And they're sentence-like descriptions. And there's also misconceptions. And a very trained tutor, human tutor, will kind of know where the problems are. And they'll anticipate that for correcting. And so what happens is they have a conversation, many-turn conversation. It may take 100 turns back and forth, tutor, student, tutor, student, tutor, student, to answer this one question and to fill in and get them to express these things. On the way, there may be a misconception, and then they correct it. That pretty much tells you what human tutors do, and what we do that is that with a computer. And we give various forms of feedback. You know, students want to know how they're doing. Yeah, right, short feedback. And we have these dialogue moves to try to get the information out of the student. Now this is key, the interactivity to get the information out of the student. This is not what I'm doing now by just information delivery. It's not that. It's highly interactive. And it does other things. And one thing I should say is for the students who are doing well, all the tutor has to do is kind of like pump them, like what else? Or give some hints. But for the student who has low knowledge, you have to prompt them and give more information. So in this exchange between the human and the student, human and the student, the tutor and the student, the big question is who's supplying most of the information? And you want to get it to where the student is trying to supply. So to illustrate this, let me show you a video of one of our first robot tutors. This is called the physics tutor. And you'll hear, how many know about the Billy Bass? Well, here's a tutor we built on physics. Oops, sorry.
An airplane flying horizontally drops a packet on a pre-selected spot when it is right above the target. Does the packet hit the target? Explain.
The packet won't hit the target because it'll fall straight down.
Good job. Okay, what else can you say?
That's a
When
pump.
gravity acts on the packet, it'll cause it to fall straight down.
Good. Think about this. What can you say about the packet's velocity at the point of release?
That's a hint.
The horizontal velocity of the packet is the same as the plane before it's released and after it's released.
Good. Try this. The velocities of the objects before and just after the packet's release are.
That's trying to get a word out of it.
Great. We're almost there. Let's try to tie up a few details. Note that the velocity of the packet is the same as that of the plane at the time of release. Let's try this together. In which direction is the velocity of the packet at the point of release?
The only force acting on the packet is the force of gravity, and at the point of release, the packet has the same horizontal velocity as the plane. So I guess it won't hit the target, it'll go past the target.
Okay, try this. Immediately after it's released, the packet has the same horizontal velocity as
Constant.
no.
That's what I finally got to know.
Velocity of
So that gives you a sense of the dialogue is pretty natural. I mean, you get the short feedback, these pumps, these hints, prompts, you know, and that's the nature of it, yeah, and how people learn, and it's all explanation driven. So after we developed AutoTutor at University of Memphis in our Interdisciplinary Institute for Intelligent Systems, the researchers there just got a long series of grants from NSF and Institute of Education Sciences, Office of Naval Research, and developed other systems. So we had AutoTutor Lite with Sheng-Yen Hu, and that could auto-tutorize just about any topic. But it wasn't a deep dialogue it was more of a superficial dialogue, but it tried to get them, it would ask like why questions and try to get them to summarize things, but the dialogue wasn't as deep. We had iStart that helped students read at deeper levels. Most of the people read at shallow levels, and this was to help them to do self-explanations and read deeper. We had Danielle McNamara's Writing Pal to help people write. We know that students hate to write, and this helps them write better. We had iDrive down there with Barry Golson. This trains students how to ask good, deep questions. Students don't know how to ask good questions that are deep, reflecting their curiosity. So imagine a student agent, very inquisitive, and a tutor agent that answers these questions, and they see a lot of curious, deep questions and answers, and a lot of them per hour, 30 to 40 an hour. And they learn how to overlearn this curiosity, because most students don't see much good question asking and inquiry. It doesn't happen in the classroom where most of the questions of the teacher are shallow questions. And most students don't ask questions, so they don't get to see it. So this makes inquiry visible. Or the Philip K. Dick Android that won the 2005 Open Competition Robotics Award in the United States. Andrew only did that. He's the one who talked with a fish. Then we have Her Advisor and IMAP. MetaTutor, it trains people on metacognition and self-regulated learning. Or Guru, this is biology. Or Deep Tutor, that's a deeper physics, deeper than AutoTutor. So all of these researchers developed all these systems and assessed them on how well they learn. It had AutoTutor in the context of this interactive 3D simulation, where you have a deep question. This is a collision problem. Has a talking head. Students control parameters on the speed of the truck and also the other parameters. And then they get to see the simulation, and then they have to describe what happens. And we think the combination of these things promotes deeper learning. We had in the Guru Tutor a way of intelligent pointing. How can you get the agent to point to the right thing at the right time? So when you introduce something for the first time, you want to point to it. Or if you want to trace a process flow. Or if you want to do a compare and contrast. All of these you want in an intelligent agent, and Guru did this. This is the self-regulated learning one, but I don't have time to talk about it. So, you have all these agent systems, and we've developed them, and we're very proud of them, and some of them were complete disasters, others were successful, and that's the way it goes when you develop these systems. But let me say a couple of words on the impact on learning, because you build these. Does it help you learn? So we know from previous research that unskilled human tutors are pretty good compared to the classroom. The effect size is about 0.42. How many here know what an effect size is? Okay. The other half is roughly one sigma effect size is about like a letter grade. It's a very rough equivalent. So 1 is about an improvement of about a letter grade. And so unskilled is 0.42, AutoTutor is 0.80. Some very sophisticated intelligent tutoring systems, it's about a full letter grade compared to the classroom. And we don't know much about skilled human tutors. It's been as high as 2. However, most of them converge about 1. Okay? So, let me tell you about one of my favorite studies where we compared 4 conditions. See if you can predict which one yielded the best learning. In the first condition, they did nothing. Okay? In the second condition, they read a textbook for an equivalent amount of time as they would be in tutor.
Who is they?
College students. Yeah, college students. Third condition is AutoTutor. Fourth condition is a human tutor in computer-mediated conversation. That's where you're interacting on a computer, but the human's in another room communicating with you, okay? So, these are the four conditions. Question, how many, you gotta vote. Who was the winner in terms of the best learning, okay? How many vote human tutors? Okay. How many vote AutoTutor? Okay, you collected $20 on the way out. How many say reading the textbook? Okay, got a couple of grouches here. Yep, okay. How many say doing nothing? Okay. That's it. This is the data. So this is adjusted post-test scores controlling for pre-test scores. And as you can see, we were very happy. AutoTutor was in the same arena, those are the error bars around it, as the human tutor. That's very nice. Can anybody see anything else interesting about this graph?
Just curious why we did nothing.
Yeah.
It's more than read textbooks.
Yeah, or the same, statistically
Yeah.
the same. There's no difference. Yeah, that's the other interesting thing. Reading the textbook, and by the way, the test is the force concept inventory. This is an objective test of physics knowledge that requires reasoning, okay? Reading the textbook is no different than doing nothing. So if you give a discriminating test on physics that requires reasoning and inference, you're not getting it from reading a textbook. You're just not getting it. You need some form of interactivity in order to get at that deeper knowledge. And that's not only in physics, but also this is in computer literacy, the other is critical thinking. If you want deeper level knowledge and reasoning, don't just give a student a book and expect them to get it. Just, it's not gonna help them learn. They might as well stay home. And they might as well sleep or play. Seems counterintuitive, but books are great for shallow learning. Books are great for accessing when you need information while you're problem solving and trying to solve something. Books are great for that, but they aren't for deep reasoning and trying to do systems level thinking, causal analyses. You need some other form of learning. Our animated agents, that's one way of doing it. There may be other ways of doing it, but it's kind of an interesting point. So, how does AutoTutor compare to comparison conditions? We run all sorts of comparison conditions. It's 0.8 compared to doing nothing or reading a textbook. It's 0.22 compared to reading relevant textbook segments. So suppose, imagine this, that you carefully point to things to read. So you have the question and you say, read this, okay, read this paragraph, read this sentence over here. It does better than that, but it's almost as good. It's 0.07, just a small advantage by reading a succinct script that succinctly answers the question. Okay, so, but of course in real life, it's not like somebody's going to deliver the succinct solution to your problem. I mean, wouldn't that be nice? If, go through life, you encounter problems, the world breaks down, but you have somebody there that succinctly gives you your solution. Of course. 0.13 compared to AutoTutor delivering speech checks in print. So we have these comparison conditions. 3D simulation is better. So here's another point in when we do this. We can track specific constructs over time. So imagine over 5 hours of training, we can track how well people have mastered force equals mass times acceleration, one of the Newtonian laws. And this is a different way of assessment. This is where if you may have 100 concepts and you track those concepts over time, over 5 hours of training and testing, and see how well they master it. And a lot of us have this comic book view of learning that there's this point in time when we have mastered it. This is when I've mastered Newton's law. And that would be like the all or none. This is where you have the red part here. This is occasions where this principle is relevant. A 0 means you missed it. A 1 is that you got it. And this would be the case that it's all zeros, and there's some point in training when you get it, and then you're perfect after that. That is the comic book view of learning. And that just rarely happens. It's usually statistical and variable. So it increases a little bit with context, but it's much more variable. Okay, that's all I want to say about learning. I could spend hours talking about learning, but I'll leave it at that. Let me get to emotions. We've spent about 8 years studying the interaction between moment-to-moment emotions and learning, because we think they're inextricably bound. And there's many emotions that people have. I mean, we've tracked many of them. And we have this camera and other sort of channels that we track their moment-by-moment emotions during learning, okay? And we do it in many contexts. I mean, we've done it in the context of AutoTutor. The incredible machine, this is another sort of thing. The A+, this is mathematics. This is the LSAT. This is before they take a law test, how they're learning before taking a law test. We have human tutors. We have all of these. We have tracked moment-to-moment learning during these sessions. And Alex, this is also another tool. And these are the emotions that occur during learning. Boredom, 23% of the time. Confusion, 25% of the time. Delight, 4% of the time. You don't get a lot of delight. Float, this is intense engagement, 28% of the time. Frustration, 16% of the time. And surprise, 4% of the time. You also get anxiety if it's testing. Okay? So these are the 6 or 7 emotions that you get during learning. And one of these predicts learning better than others. Can you predict what, of all these emotions, if you wanted to see what correlates with emotions more than others, which one do you think would be the winner?
Surprised.
How many votes surprise? Okay. Any other votes?
Confusion.
We got a confusion vote back there. How many vote confusion? Okay. Anything else?
Delight.
Huh?
Delight.
Delight? How many vote delight? How many vote flow? Okay, this is okay. How many vote boredom? Of course, that's negative. Notice how the votes were pretty distributed among them. It's not like we all had common intuitions. Well, the answer is confusion. Confusion. That is when you're thinking, and some of it rather disrupted thinking, but you're grasping at difficult concepts. Some people don't know enough to be confused. And so, you know, we track emotions. We not only find out what their self-reports are, but we track their emotions with physiological sensors. From your facial expression, we have an automated tracker of facial expressions working with people, Roz Picard at MIT. We have your speech intonation. We have the dialogue history. And we have your posture. That's right. Your posture can be diagnostic. If you're very engaged, your nose is closer to the material. If you're bored, it's back here. If you fidget more during extreme boredom, you probably know. I'm checking the fidgeting out here. Yeah, you know. And so what we found is of all of these channels, that it's really the dialogue and the face that are most diagnostic of your emotions. And these automated sensors can be about as accurate as experts on detecting people's emotions. Interestingly, the future computers will track the dialogue, and they typically have cameras. So just from the normal computer that people work with, you can pretty much track these emotions. We now know more about the half-life of emotions, like how long do these emotions last? And we know that that delight and surprise are short-lived. I mean, it'd be weird if you had people surprised, you know. Frustration is intermediate, but that may continue. There are some games where you stay frustrated for hours. Well, maybe not hours, whereas boredom, flow, and confusion have last the longest. And once again, can we engineer the training material in a way that can push around these emotions for different durations? And right now, the field knows nothing about this. This is complete open frontier. People don't know about the moment-to-moment emotions and how people learn. There's some people, if you track their emotions, they're drones. They just kind of stand there and look like this. Others are hopelessly confused. Others are emotional roller coasters. And so we want to know, how does that correlate with their learning? And we've been exploring that. Interestingly, some emotions you can't tell by just the face. In fact, let me show you 3 emotions that we know have implications for learning and how it's worn on the face. This is the facial expression for neutral. This is the facial expression for boredom. This is the facial expression for engaged flow. The face does not discriminate that. The face discriminates confusion, where you wrinkle up, you know, and it also surprise. Those are the only 2 emotions really worn on the face. Frustration is hidden. Most people try to hide their frustration. It's mainly the body and the dialogue history that detects frustration. And so the idea is you want to have the system respond to the emotions. There's a whole story on sequencing of emotions. I wish I would know about it, but let me just briefly convey it to you. There are 2 cycles to think about in learning. One is the flow, confusion, conquering cycle. So it's, you get a challenge, you're absorbed, you get a challenge, you conquer it. That's delightful. Another challenge, you conquer it, delightful. And so you get this like flow, confusion sort of oscillation. Another one, though, is where you get frustration that leads to boredom, and then you disengage. That's the one you want to try to avoid. And so coupling your interventions with these emotion patterns and the dynamics of emotions is one of the things that we've been looking at. We've got a model on how to respond. It's fine if you can detect their emotions, but what do you do? What does the agent do? You don't want the agent to just copy the student. I mean, if the student's confused, you don't want the agent to be confused. That would be bizarre. And similarly, if the human's frustrated, you don't want the agent to act frustrated. There's a complex responsive system. So we've been doing experiments on how the agents should respond emotionally and cognitively. One of the recent comparisons we've had is between an unemotional tutor, no emotions, versus a very affect-supportive tutor, an empathetic tutor. If the student isn't doing well, they kind of give encouraging remarks. Keep at it. I think you can do it. Or I know that material is difficult. Yet, you know, very supportive, empathetic, nurturing. Versus the shake-up AutoTutor. This is the one where it says, well, I can see you're confused. Or it's even rude, playfully rude, by the way, not nastily rude, playfully rude, where if the student says something wrong, it says not even close, you must be daydreaming. Or even if they do something good, it might say, well, aren't you the little genius? You know, it tries to be playful, but more shaking up, confrontation. So, question. Which of these tutors lead to the best learning? How many vote shake-up? Okay. How many vote affect sensitive? Okay. How many vote unemotional? Well, the answer is, it depends what phase of learning. And this is on learning games we're talking about. We could also talk how much they like it, but this is learning games. During the first half an hour, you don't want an emotional tutor. You want it to be unemotional. Just kind of like when you meet a human in the first half an hour, you don't want to be particularly overly emotional. The next half an hour, however, it is the supportive tutor, the supportive, empathetic, but only for the low knowledge students. Only for the low knowledge. The high knowledge, it's almost patronizing and they don't want to see it. During the third half an hour, then it is the rude tutor, the shake-up tutor, but only for the high knowledge people. And so what's interesting is it kind of is a complicated interaction on their level of knowledge and their phase, the developmental history of interacting. And so we're still in the process of trying to figure out that. So if you have an agent, that your favorite pet agent, and just like you have friends, you can have agents that you get attached to. You can have a relationship with an agent. And there may be stages of bonding, stages of a relationship. You may be getting a divorce with an agent, not just getting rid of it. So these are all questions that people are exploring now in the lovely world of agents. So let me turn to Operation ARA, and I'm going to be even briefer on these segments. Operation ARA is a game commercialized by Pearson Education. You can buy it if you want. It will help you learn about scientific reasoning. And it lasts about 12 hours. And the first version we called Operation Aries, but Pearson made us change the name to ARA. You know, it's one of these naming issues. So what we try to do is combine principles of learning with game aspects. We think a big future is how you have a good integration of game foundations, where game would have narrative, control, competition sometimes, versus learning principles like being adaptive, dialogues, feedback, that sort of interactivity. So how do you mesh these? That's what we try to do. And we had to have a coherent story. So it's an epic. There's love, suspense, political intrigue, also aliens. Because the big message in the story was that aliens had come down to Earth and are trying to take over by propagating bad science. So you, as a human in civilization, have to be on the lookout for bad science in the news and reported in various outlets. And if you can spot these aliens, then you can lock them up and kill them. And so that's part of the storyline. It has these adaptive trialogs where you have like an expert agent vicariously training a fellow student, and poor students need to learn by vicarious learning, whereas very good students, you have them learn by teaching. So we have these trialogs right now. And so let me just show you a little video.
Deep within the Federal Bureau of Science is a secret so powerful that few know of its existence. Disguised aliens from another planet are covertly destroying our scientific ability. This is the story behind Operation Aries. Operation Aries is a computerized educational game that teaches core aspects of research methods to high school and college students. Players first take a science course with a virtual student and teacher.
Today's chapter is on independent variables.
They read an online science book that was written by the aliens. Learning is reinforced by tutorial conversations among the player, teacher, and fellow student.
Okay, last lecture. Why don't we get back to the training course?
The book emphasizes over 20 core concepts common to the physical and social sciences. After reading the book, players critically evaluate flawed research published by the aliens. Players are aided by the teacher. During this time, new clues emerge, revealing the aliens' ultimate plans. Finally, players practice posing questions to captured scientists and evaluating their answers. If correct, players identify alien spies and help save the world from ruin. Operation Aries brings together several principles of learning and engagement, intelligent tutoring programming, and video game attributes.
So, we think students can learn a lot by bitching about cases. We think students like to complain. And so imagine showing these cases on studies and they sit and try to identify the flaws and criticize it. We think that is very engaging. Just like they'd like to criticize pieces of art, criticize their friends, never themselves, of course. But the idea is that critique mode would be engaging. And it helps people learn. It helps people, whatever their level, whether they're at a community college or at an elite college, it does help them learn. And what we can do is track these concepts, these core concepts, over the course of interactive text, case studies, and interrogation. So, let me briefly go over a few others. Another game is with David Schaefer at Wisconsin, and this is a game to help groups of people learn about urban planning. So let me show you this one.
Land Science is a computer game which lets students play the role of interns at Urban Design Associates, an urban and regional planning firm in their state. The work begins when players get an email from Kurt, the lead planner at the firm and a fictional character in the game, who sends them a request for proposals from the mayor of the city.
To get started on our proposals, we conduct a virtual site visit where we learn about the history of the neighborhood and the issues that one group of stakeholders in the city care about.
Right now I was checking how open spaces, parking garages, parking spaces are affecting the city.
Players use iPlan, a mapping tool that lets them change the zoning of the different parcels on a site. As they make changes, graphs show the projected impact on issues that stakeholders care about. Players team up to determine what the stakeholders will find acceptable. Then they regroup to develop the final plan for the site.
In the preference survey, we just had to please one stakeholder group. For our final plan and proposal, we need to create a plan that pleases all the stakeholder groups.
After creating their plan, the players write a formal proposal that justifies their planning choices.
I'm changing State Street to have more houses so that more people can shop there. It will attract more people to shop.
Along the way, players can communicate with live mentors using a built-in chat tool. Mentors model how professional planners work, help the players when they get stuck, and push players to reflect on their work. Land science has been played by students from ages 10 to 18, including gifted and talented and special needs students, as well as ESL students in the US and in Europe.
I just didn't realize how much they would personally take on these characters and seriously think through big ideas. And I think, again, I think kids who are 9 and 10 years old are ready for it, and I think we underestimate their problem solving and critical thinking skills.
I kind of like to think about like what you could do, like how to solve the problem. It's fun.
So, we're in the middle of assessing that, collecting data in Boston right now. Educational testing service is interested in these agents, and we're building virtual realities with agents, human interacting with two agents. This one is a bumbling male agent, and then a smarty pants female agent. And this is assessing reading, writing, speaking, and listening, all by, in this case, they have to read this sign. This is about making sure you don't take a water bottle into any liquids into a library. Just experiential flow with these agents where they have to read, write, speak, and listen. This is how educational testing service is going to be assessing these skills in the future. And finally, we're trying to help struggling adult readers on a new grant that started with Georgia State, Toronto, and Memphis. And this is where you have agents that kind of guide them as they use a conventional interface. And some of them don't know how to type, so you have to show them how to type and those sort of things. So we have a lot of projects with agents, and it takes a community of us doing it. You can't do it alone. You need foundational community, and we have a big group. In the language, learning, and discourse sciences in the Institute for Intelligent Systems. And who knows where all the world of agents will go in the future, but whatever it is, I probably can't predict it right now. So, thank you.